Hi, everybody. Welcome to StandOut. It's a strengths-based approach to workforce success. Hopefully, you had an opportunity to take the assessment before attending the session so that if Linda's talking to you about your strengths, you can relate your own strengths to how you want to use it in your future career or school. Linda Marks is going to be our facilitator, and she's been with Corning for over 30 years. And she is a research manager in our technology community. And Linda has been partnering with me for several years and offering StandOut to the interns every summer. So I think that you'll really enjoy this presentation. Go ahead, Linda.
And instructions, is everybody versed on using the comment section if they have a question and from previous WebEx sessions? While I'm talking, I may not catch them, but Karen and will chime in if you have a question and let me know, and we can take them right as I'm walking through the presentation. So I wanted to remind you that most of the information I'm going to cover today about strengths, I want you to go out and talk about. I want you to share it with the world. Some of the examples I use are very Corning specific, and that information can be Corning restricted. So you've probably seen this in some of our previous presentations that to keep Corning restricted information in-house and protect that info. Here's our agenda for the day. I know we had scheduled this to go until 5 o'clock. Quite honestly, we won't go that long. I do this workshop when we're all together. We are doing breakout groups and team training and then coming back together and sharing. We don't have the opportunity to do that this summer, so things will be a little different. I'll have exercises that you can do on your own afterwards. In the first slide, and you will get copies of these slides, is my email address. And if you have questions while you're doing some of the work on your own, feel free to drop me an email and I'll be glad to go back through stuff. But again, we won't go for the whole 3 hours. A little bit about me. It's kind of a busy slide. I've been with Corning a long time. The important background, how did I get started doing this work? I had just started supervising a group, and it was a very troubled group. When I got the opportunity, I was a bench scientist, got the opportunity to supervise this group. I actually asked the director, are you sending me down there to shut this group down and move the people to other jobs? I was like the 4th supervisor in 3 years, lots of problems. He said, no. We're giving everybody one more chance. So I took the job, went down there, and again, it was tough. They had no reason to trust me. They know supervisors came, stayed for a little bit, and moved on. We worked hard. We worked hard for 8 or 9 months. The team turned around. People were performing. The problems that were there, we addressed them, and it was getting to be a good, strong team. And then it was time for performance reviews. And I don't know if you've had jobs where you do these annual performance reviews. I had been with Corning for 10 or 12 years. I knew what a performance review is. I'm going to go sit down with my supervisor. We're going to talk about the past year, and she's going to tell me the things I don't do so great, what my weaknesses are, and how we can fix them together. And I just knew after all the hard work we did with these people, if I have to sit down with my team members and tell them, hey, it was a good year, but there's still all this other stuff that you don't do so great and we need to fix you, I was pretty much going to blow up all the accomplishments we'd had. And I went and I told my mentor, how do I go to HR and tell them I'm not doing performance reviews this year? And I learned that you can't tell HR you're not doing performance reviews. You have to do them. And he told me, go read this book that Marcus Buckingham wrote called First Break All the Rules. And the first rule Marcus wanted you to break was that one where you sit down with your people and you look them in the eye and you put the virtual hand out around their shoulder and tell them what's wrong with them and that you're going to help them fix it. That you break that rule. You tell them what they did great this past year and how we're going to build on that, and we're going to make this a stronger team. Since I read that and started doing it, that team has turned around. That actual group no longer exists, but those people, some have retired, others have moved on to great careers, become project leaders and supervisors themselves. And I started facilitating workshops because I really believe this strength-based approach is the way to go. I've got a BS in chemistry from Elmira College here in Elmira, New York. Mid-career, I went back to school and got my master's in engineering at Rochester Institute of Technology in manufacturing leadership. Came back to an R&D organization, and my director asked, so are you going to move to a manufacturing plant now? I said, no, there's always a crisis in a manufacturing plant. I'm not moving. What he let me do was take all that knowledge about what makes manufacturing work. How do you be a leader in a manufacturing plant and apply that to an R&D environment? So I was very lucky that somebody believed in my strengths and let me actually create this global lab support job. I explain it to people as my job and my team's job is to help scientists do science. I will provide the admin support, the quality management, the purchasing, the building new labs. All that comes under my group so the scientists can focus on their strength doing science. One of the questions I was asked to let everybody know was, so why did I decide to work at Corning? And it's not a really inspiring answer. I started working for Corning because when I moved here, they had a job opening and I needed a job. I think the important thing is why I stayed at Corning for decades now. And I will retire from Corning in about 7 years. The reason I stayed here was Corning's values and the things this company finds important are the same things that I value. So it makes it a wonderful fit. I'm not at odds with the things that I love to do and what are important to me. They're also important to this company. So I would encourage you as you move through your career to assess a company that way. Are you going to have to force fit yourself into that company culture, or does it align with the things that are important to you? And since Corning is one of the longest established R&D, industrial R&D labs in the country, it's been a great place to do creative scientific work when I was a bench scientist and to help other people do that same kind of work now and make a difference in the world. My Corning experiences here, I've worked my way through various jobs. Even though I've been at one company, Corning is a big global company. I've held different positions from lab technologist and scientist right up to my position now as a global lab support manager. The other place where I've been active in addition to my technical career, I've been very active in our employee resource groups. These are great ways to build skills, build your network, and meet people from all across the company. I've been active in the Corning Professional Women's Forum, the Black Technology Network, Spectra, the Technology Community Women's Network, and I led TCWN, and I was also the leader for a couple years of our Corporate Diversity Network. I'm not as active in those groups now, but I've taken on the role of encouraging my people to be active in those organizations and making sure I give them the time and the space to work with those groups, make contributions, and develop their skills. Here's what we're going to run through today. We're going to talk about StandOut 2.0. You've got the link to take the assessment yourself. We're going to talk about how do you make this personal? How do you identify your own strengths and craft strength statements so you can talk to other people about what your strengths are? And then how you can use this same approach with the teams that you work on. At the beginning of this strengths movement, the two people I'm going to focus on today, Marcus Buckingham and Dr. Donald Clifton, they wanted to change what they saw as society's obsession with fixing weaknesses. Just as I explained to you, a performance review was about telling people what's wrong and that'll help fix them. Or a student who's not doing well in school will focus on where their weaknesses really are and we'll put all our time and effort into those weaknesses. Clifton and Buckingham, they believed it was better to focus on people's strengths and develop those. Clifton was the psychologist of this team, and he published a lot of scientific journal articles about strengths. But that's not the way to reach a lot of people. I'm not sitting around on a Monday night reading psychology journals. I will pick up a book, though, that my mentor suggests I read. So he co-authored a book called Now Discover Your Strengths. And that's where he put that scientific work into terms that were accessible to everybody, that we could all understand this strengths movement. He defined a strength as something where if we can focus on people's strengths, where they have natural abilities, where they are competent, people wouldn't just thrive in the workplace, wouldn't just survive the workplace, but they would actually thrive in the workplace. And again, his quick definition is consistent, near perfect performance in a given activity. Things that you do where other people will even say, you make it look so easy when they know it's not. That may be one of your strengths. Clifton and Buckingham worked for the Gallup organization, the ones who do the polls, for many years. And over 30 years, Gallup gathered information about strengths. They went out to companies, they did over 2 million interviews. The questions that they were asking helped them get strengths down to 34 themes. This doesn't cover all the strengths in the world, but it covers the themes that just keep popping up all the time. When they started doing this work, Strength Finders 2.0 was the assessment we would have people do. I never bothered to memorize all 34 themes because I keep this slide on my desktop. You can see all the strengths, 34 are listed here. People would take the assessment, learn what their top ones are. My top ones are, where is it? Positivity, is that on here? Positivity, which has come in handy during the shutdown and being home for months and months. And woo, winning others over. Now, if you look at some of these terms, it's kind of hard to talk to people about this. To go and tell your boss, I took a strengths assessment and my strength lies in being futuristic. So we should give me job assignments that let me be futuristic. Mine is woo. If you can imagine me going to my director and saying, Ralph, I took this assessment and I found out it is spot on. I am all about the woo. And he is very generous. Let me create my own job. But you could just see him kind of doing the eye roll like, the woo, are you going to be selling used cars next, Linda? Well, the fact is, if I was selling used cars, I would be good at it. I would get you the car you like. You would love that car. You would be excited about this purchase because I am all about the woo. But I didn't go into used car sales. I went into research, scientific research. So if you have an idea for the next thing that's going to change the world, come to me. I'm the person who will help you talk to other people about that idea. I will win them over. I will get you the funding you need for your project. I will find the people who should be on your team to help you move it forward, and I'll win them over and get them excited about it too. So the thing I want you to realize is you have these strengths, and they don't direct you to one career over another. You're choosing the career based on the things you're interested in. You bring those strengths to that career, whatever it is, whether it's selling used cars or selling innovative ideas in a tech company. In 2003, Dr. Clifton passed away, and soon after that, Marcus Buckingham left Gallup and formed his own company, the Marcus Buckingham Company. I tell people that Buckingham's strength was not creative company names. He just named it after himself. The purpose of his company was to create management training programs and tools built around this whole strengths revolution that he believed in, to carry on the legacy he and Clifton were building at Gallup. That standout assessment, that's the link that was sent to you, comes from the Buckingham Corporation. What he did was take those 34 themes, those talent themes, and start to think about how those talents show up in the workplace. And he got it down to 9 strength roles, a whole lot easier to remember. You take the assessment, you're told what your top 2 are. It doesn't mean you don't have the other strengths. It means those are your top strengths. It also measures not just what your strength is, but how it shows up in the workplace. So again, this all starts to get easier to talk about at work. Again, you don't see woo on this list. My top 2 strengths on standout are connector and stimulator. It's a little easier to talk about stimulating ideas. I can bring a team together and get them excited about the new idea. I can connect people, I can connect ideas. Those are my strengths. I'm not spending a lot of time trying to explain what woo is or what futuristic is, that these become a little easier to talk about in the workplace. Now, over the years, I've had people in my workshop, some of them have taken standout, some of them took the strength finders. What these assessments do is give us a common language to talk about strengths in the workplace. So if everybody on your team has taken the standout advantage, you guys are going to be talking about the same strengths. You're going to be talking about connector. If you haven't taken the assessment, you still know what your strengths are, and the people around you know what they are. It just might take a little more talking to make sure you're on the same page and talking about what these strengths are. Buckingham also has been very big about the importance of bringing what you love to your workplace. We're spending so much time at work. Why wouldn't you want to do the things you love all those hours you're at work? And we're blurring these lines between what's work and what's family and what's community. And because of that, it becomes even more critical to be able to identify the things you love, the things that are your strengths, and to think about how you bring them to the workplace. If you can do the things you love, you're going to want to invest time in them. It's not going to be a burden to do activities that are tapping into things that aren't your strengths. If work doesn't let you tap into your strengths, that means you still have to do your work. We have bills to pay. We have to show up every day. But if work doesn't feed those strengths, now you still have to find time to feed those strengths. You're going to have to make time to coach a group or join a community activist group or do things with the church. And you're going to start to resent the time at work that pulls you away from doing the things you love. So we're going to talk today about how to fit your strengths into the workplace. In rare cases, that won't be possible. You may have a job that you don't like, but right now you have to have that job. And then that's okay, but you're going to make time to find something else out. I'm lucky I work for a big global corporation. If I had a job I didn't like right now, that doesn't mean I have to leave the whole company. There's other activities out there. I can look for other positions. This whole strengths approach, when people ask, why do we want to do this? It's just one more tool, one more, what color is your parachute? But this whole strengths approach, it's empowering. When I was able to talk to my team about, here's the things you're good at, there's no stigmatizing language. I'm not telling them what's wrong with them. they're inspired. They want to keep doing what's right and good. I want to keep doing what's right and good. I don't want to have to fix my people. I want to value who they are right now. If you're talking about your strengths, you're going to have more confidence in the work you do and the work you could be doing. So this whole idea of strength supports this revolution that Clifton and Buckingham started, that if we can focus on strengths development and not fixing people's weaknesses, we can really change the world. And while we start talking about how to do that change, there's some myths and barriers we still have to overcome. I've been doing these workshops for 15, 20 years, and the same things still come up in organizations. There's this idea that people can learn to be competent in almost anything. So all I really have to do is hire competent people. We'll train them to do the work that needs to be done. And their greatest room for growth is in their area of greatest weakness. And this isn't true. Organizations are finding out if you hire people who are more than competent, who have the strengths that you need, your company will be more powerful and robust. We talk about hiring competent people and teaching them almost anything, giving them the learning tools that they need. A lot of jobs require you to do public speaking, whether it's in front of your group or bigger ones where you might be giving a keynote presentation, or I don't know if you've seen any of the videos or had any conversations with our CEO, Wendell Weeks. Wendell is an amazing public speaker. Yes, he's had training and he has speechwriters, but we didn't teach him to be a great public speaker. We could take anyone and teach them to be an adequate public speaker so it doesn't hold them back. But one of Wendell's strengths is this ability to do public speaking and to rally shareholders and company people. It's not something we taught him. It's an innate strength that he has. So again, you want to tap into people's strengths. These myths are off the mark. Buckingham has this quote that his dream is that you find a life where you get to express this unique spirit that is you. And that spirit's made up of your strengths. And if you can tap into that, again, this sounds really lofty, but you really can be your best self if you can tap into those strengths. You can be that optimistic person who's going to change the world with your contributions. Gallup asked a question at 36 companies, and it was a pretty simple question. They asked people at work, do you have the opportunity to do what you do, to do your best every day? Not all day every day, but when you go to work every day, do you know you're going to have an opportunity to do your best? And when work teams answered that they agreed with that statement, yeah, I do. I do have the opportunity to do my best every day. Those teams were 38% more likely to be highly productive. They had higher customer satisfaction scores. They were 50% more likely to have high employee retention. We spend a lot of money bringing in talent and training them and investing in them. And then when they leave, it hits the company's bottom line. So when we talk about strengths, it's not just to make you, the individual, feel good about yourself. It makes a difference to the bottom line of a company. Beyond these metrics, we saw that when people have the opportunity to work to their strengths every day, the employee absenteeism goes down. Workplace accidents go down. The return on investment to company shareholders is higher at companies where people can do their best every day. Sometimes we get managers who are asking, why am I sending people to this half-day workshop? We've got work to do. And this is part of that answer I provide. It's that it's not just good for the individuals. It's going to make a bottom line difference to your company. So send your people. Let them learn to identify what their strengths are. If you are just focused on your bottom line and not on your people, there is still something here for you. Gallup also did some other studies that pointed out what happens depending on how your manager engages with you. And I'll admit, my life is not all great. I like my manager, but it's not always perfect. There are times where I know we might have a difference of opinion on how to approach a subject or what our priorities should be for the week. And if my manager would just ignore me and let me do my work, it's going to be a good day. If you have a manager that ignores you and just lets you get on with your work, you're going to be disengaged about 40% of your time. That means I still get 60% of your time where you're actively engaged and contributing, maybe not to your best level, but I get that 60%. And remember, I'm paying you for the whole 100%. Well, what if you have a manager who's a bit old school and she focuses on your weaknesses? She cares about you. She can point out the things that are wrong and that are holding you back and help you fix yourself. Then you're only going to be disengaged 22% of the time. Big difference. Somebody is actually paying attention to you and caring about your performance. But if you have a manager, or if you could be the manager or team leader who focuses on people's strengths, then people are only disengaged 1% of the time. So again, if I'm focusing on my people's strengths and making sure they can bring those to work and they're only disengaged 1% of the time, you know, it's no big deal if we're dealing with everybody working from home and not as much work might not get done this week. I know, but they're really engaged with what they're doing. It's okay. We all win when people can focus on their strengths. So before we move on and stop talking about people's weaknesses, I do want you to think about an activity that made you feel weak. I share this story that I had a supervisor earlier in my career who would tap me for every social event we needed to do. The company picnic or the department picnic, a lunch, getting a birthday card circulated. And I would do this stuff and people would show up and the event would go well. I hated doing it. I'm a social person and I will show up to your party, but please don't make me plan it. And I finally had to go and tell him, it's like, do not make me keep planning these social activities. They made me feel weak. I felt drained when I had to do them. And he said, but you do them so well. So you want to keep in mind, just because you do something well doesn't make it a strength of yours. Yeah, I can plan a department picnic with the best of them and people will show up and have a great time, and I will hate the effort I had to put into that. If you can't think of an activity that makes you feel weak, think about other people you may work with who you know they're not focusing on their strengths. They're feeling weak. You see their name on a distribution list for a meeting and you're like, oh my God, John is on this team. Every time I'm on a team with John, we can't do this. It's not going to work. It just kind of brings everybody down, right? So think about those activities. We talked a little bit about how you feel when you have to do something that makes you feel weak. You're drained. You're really not looking forward to a lot other than getting the activity done and over with. The people around you pick up on that energy, and your whole organization, eventually your company, is weakened when you have to keep doing things that make you feel weak all the time. Now think about an activity that makes you feel strong. Makes you want to sit up and breathe deep and say, I did a really good job there. And not only did I really do a good job there, but I'm ready to do it again. I'm energized. I'm excited. What is the next challenge you're bringing to me? And if you're bringing that kind of energy to your team, how do they feel? They're starting to look at, hey, look at John. John did pretty good this week on that. I bet if I focused on XYZ, I could help the team turn around next week. It's kind of infectious, just like when you focus on your weaknesses, but it's infectious in a good way. If you can focus on doing the things that make you feel strong, other people around you are going to want to do the things that make them feel strong. And again, it's good for the company. So before you can even get there, though, you have to know what those strengths are. So if you're going to take control of your workday, you're going to do things that make you feel strong. You have to get really good at being able to describe what your strengths are. You took the assessment, or you're going to take the assessment. You can say what your strengths are, but you need to make them real to the people you have to work with. And that way they can help see how you show up at the workplace, what kind of assignments tap into those strengths. A few more myths we want to overcome before you start talking to people about your strengths. There's this myth that as you grow, your personality changes. The truth that you really want to focus on is there are these innate talents you have that you become more and more of who you already are as you grow. And you know this is true. There are times where you've told people, I'm going to go on and get my PhD in ceramic sciences. And somebody will say, I always knew you were going to be a scientist. You're always wanting to learn about things and how they work. Or you've said you want to be an engineer, and your uncle says, I knew when you were 3 years old you'd be an engineer. You would take things apart to see how they worked. You couldn't always put them back together again, but we knew. You're going to become a patent attorney because you like science and the law. And somebody says, a lawyer? I knew. I remember you would negotiate everything. You would negotiate your curfew. You would negotiate the chores you had to do at home. You are going to be a fine attorney. So these people in your life who really know you, they saw those strengths when you were 5, when you were 10, when you're 18. So those strengths are always there. You're just building on them and bringing them into the different situations you're in. The second myth we've talked about, you're going to grow most in your areas of greatest weakness, that you should focus on those things you really don't do well and get really good at them and overcome them. Well, we've already talked about this. I don't want you to ignore your weaknesses. If they're going to hold you back from the job you have, you need to address them. And you need to make sure they're not a weakness that's going to bring you down. I would always get on my performance review for years that I'm not an organized person. And they would send me to training on how to be organized, and I'd give tools, and I'd buy books, and I'd have different little spreadsheets. And the best thing that's happened now is I have 3 administrative assistants who report to me. Those people are so organized. I recognize my weakness. And when it comes time to being really, really organized, I turn to them for some help. I don't let my weakness drag me down, but I have accepted the fact that I am never going to be the most organized person in the world. It's better for me to focus on my areas of strength. I've got another example there. A company brought in a speed reading class for its employees. We have lots of information coming at us. You have to do tons of reading. You need to understand what you've read. You need to retain that information. So they brought in the speed reading class to help the slow readers improve, get better at this. It's a job requirement. And there were also fast readers in the class. Before they got the training, those slow readers were reading at 85 words per minute, and the fast readers at 300 words per minute. They put them through the test and the training. The slow readers, they really did see a marked improvement. By 50%, they were up to 134 words per minute. Now the fast readers who are already way above the slow readers, even at the improvement, the course also helped them. They tapped into their strength. Their reading comprehension went way up. They started reading at 1,800 words per minute, a 600% change. And again, you can see the difference that if you focus on your strengths, those innate things that are a talent of yours, invest in those, you get much bigger payback. I've got a third myth. A good team member does whatever it takes to help the team. And you'll hear this in all kinds of situations. Here in the workplace, we hear it most often. I've heard it when I'm helping a manufacturing team. They're in a crisis. They can't get product out the door, and every hour we can't get product out the door, it costs the company money. So no one will go home until that crisis is resolved. And everybody will do whatever it takes to help. And people say that, the leaders say that. You will do whatever it takes. The real truth is we don't want you to do whatever it takes. We don't necessarily want you on the production line making cardboard boxes so when they can finally pack product, they have enough boxes. You might have to do some of that. But if you have a skill that could have helped avoid that crisis in the first place or resolve it faster, that's what we want you to do, not whatever it takes. We want you to take your strength and solve the crisis. Tell people, I am really good at gathering and organizing the data. Let me do that. And somebody else raises their hand and she says, I'm really good at spotting trends. As soon as you have that data together, let me take a look at it and look for some root cause. That's what's going to help solve the crisis. A good team member should be bringing their strengths to the team, not doing anything, but doing the thing that they do best to help the team out. And I've got this question here about that third myth. It's a really hard one, that if people are telling you that you need to be a team player and do whatever it takes, and you hear this on a sports team, you hear it in manufacturing, it's hard to say no, because people are going to hear that you don't want to be a team player, and that's not what I'm saying. You do need to be a team player, and the best way to be a team player is make sure people know what your strengths are and help them see how you can help them solve the problem. Okay, we're done talking about weaknesses for a while. We're going to talk about strengths. Buckingham explains a strength as an activity that makes you feel strong. And you look at this sentence and you're like, okay, that really isn't helping me out. But what Buckingham means is that you know what your strengths are. Think about those things that make you feel strong. You feel energized. You are so excited about the work, time slips away. Before you know it, you've been working on something since you sat down at your desk in the morning and oh my gosh, you worked right through lunch. But that's okay because you enjoyed doing the work. It was something that spoke to your strength. Or the team is working on something and assignments have been given out and you didn't get the assignment that worked to your strength, but you are right at that person's desk saying, hey, I'm really good at this and I want to help you. That you can't not do these activities that make you feel strong. You're seeking out the opportunities. So you know what your strengths are. If you took the StandOut assessment, and I've been seeing some of the comments pop up that you have been doing that, you have a list with your top 2 strengths. And an aside to all this and coming up with your strength statements, Corning Incorporated is known for its innovation. We're not a successful company because we make the most products or the cheapest products or the right color product. We're a successful company because we are darn good at innovation. When you're doing innovation, you need creators and pioneers. So what if those aren't your top strengths? Do you have a place, a role at an innovation company? And the answer is, of course you do. I've been in rooms with scientists who are creators and pioneers, where like the whole group is creators and pioneers, and they have great ideas. They have all kinds of ideas, but there's nobody in that room telling them what the future looks like, or telling them, we can't scale that up. We need to stop talking about that because that's just not ever going to happen. So you don't want a room full of only creators and pioneers. When we do this exercise in workshops, and people have had the chance to do that standout assessment ahead of time, I actually put together a whole spreadsheet, and we color code it, and you can see what kind of diverse team we have and where people's strengths are. I did this for a group down at our Keller, Texas plant, one of the engineering groups. And they were pretty pleased with how diverse their group was. What they would do is they would come up with new solutions for the production line to use. So the engineers would work on these improvements, they would present it to the production line, and the production line would implement it. One of the things the group was missing with all their strengths was there was nobody really good at selling and marketing, but the team reminded me that that was okay because that wasn't their job anyway. They just needed to pass their ideas along to production to implement. We did some more work, and we're chatting through the afternoon, and we wanted to talk about some gap assessments. And what they wanted me to do was do the strengths training for the production team, because they said they weren't the problem, but the production team was. They'd do their engineering, and they'd present these great ideas, and the production team seemed to understand what they were saying, but they didn't really jump at implementing these great ideas. And I pointed out, well, you already know your gap is selling and marketing, and in a way, where you're falling down is how you sell and market to the production group. I gave them a call about 2 months later. Did they need to tune up? How were things going? Were they able to apply this strength-based approach? And their team leader told me what they started doing was, before they made presentations to the production team, they were actually making their presentations to some of the marketing folks who had nothing to do with what was going on the production floor. They were trying to market Corning product to our external customers. They were getting some tips from the marketing people, and now when they presented stuff to the production team was buying into those ideas. They were tapping into a strength that they didn't have. So as you take your assessments, own your strengths. When you're on a team, try to understand what the other strengths are and tap into those so the whole team can be successful. And if you're missing a strength, you may not actually need to hire in somebody with that strength. You may be able to tap it from somewhere else in the company. The other thing to remember is that standout assessment is listing your top 2 strengths. It's not saying you don't possess strengths in any of the other areas. You do. These are just your top 2. There's people on your team who may be able to tap into some of those other strengths. Their number 2 strength might be here, and their number 3 strength might be right here, and if that's the strength you need, they can certainly rise to the occasion, and so can you. Corning also has this global leadership model. And over the years, as I've worked with HR, we've talked about this skill set you need to be a successful leader in the company. And it starts with when you start work and you're an individual contributor, these are the skills you need for yourself. How do you manage yourself? How do you make sure you're excited and energized about the work you're doing? And then you move up to team leader or supervisor or director, and the level and the depth of skill you need increases as your leadership role increases. And where does strengths fit in with all of this? You can take those 9 strengths from the standout assessment, and they just naturally tend to align with different parts of the leadership model. I mentioned I was a connector stimulator. as a leader, as a manager, it's really easy for me to mobilize and develop people. That's where my strength lies. That work comes easy to me. As a leader, that's where I tend to put my time and effort. I can't ignore these other things, but I can tap other people on my team who are good at it. When I need to create vision and strategy, it's not that I can't do that. I do, but I might run it by one of the creators on my team before I go out and mobilize and develop people. So again, another reason to understand what your strengths are and how they're going to show up in the workplace. I want to put all this together now. We've been talking for I've been talking for quite some time. Buckingham has reminded us over the years that only 17% of people say they get to use their strengths at work. Well, he's been doing this for like 20 years. That number has gone up to 18%. So there's lots of room for improvement. How do you actually apply your strengths so you can be successful at work? How do you talk to your boss, to your team leader, to your colleagues about your strengths? This book, you can pick it up and go through it, and it walks you right through a process. You don't need to do that. We'll run through some of this today. Remember, Buckingham described your strengths as something you can't not do. They make you feel strong. They make you be a force of nature, but you don't want them to go to waste. You need to be able to start talking about them to people. You don't want to wait for them to guess what your strengths are. They might guess wrong or take a long time to figure out what they are. You need to be able to talk to people about what your strengths are. We've talked about most of these points. What are your strengths? How do you know it's a strength? Time slips away. You can't not do it. People are telling you, oh, you do that and you make it seem so easy. So I want you to think about things you did in the last week, if not the last week, the last month, the last year, things that made you feel strong and magnificent. I want you to write down 2 to 4 of those things that made you feel strong and magnificent. And we're going to take those and write strength statements. You can take some of the things, the statements from your StandOut assessment and use those to start writing your strength statement, or you can tap into those people who knew you and have told you they're not surprised you're going to be an engineer. I recommend that people have a board of directors. These are people who will give you honest feedback as you work through these exercises, as you grow your career. Now, one of those people on your board of directors should be the cheerleader, the person who thinks you can do no wrong. There's a place for them in your life. You need them, but you also need these other people on your board of directors who can give you that honest feedback. When you say, I feel that this is one of my strengths, they can honestly say, I don't see that, tell me more, or I know you feel really great when you do that, but you might need to do a little skills training to really make that strength pop. You need those people helping you grow your career. So you've got those 2 to 4 activities. You've thought about it. You've taken them from your assessment. You've checked in with your board of directors. This mnemonic here, sign, just gives you an easy way. Is this really a strength? Just because I'm really good at planning the department picnic, is that really a strength of mine? Do I feel effective doing it? Am I focused when I do it? Am I willing to learn more and invest time in getting better at this? So now you've got those 2 to 4 activities. This is a bit of an eye chart, and it's going to be in the handouts you get. But when you describe a strength, you want to describe it with a verb. You don't want to say, I'm a people person, or my strength is connector. You want to use a verb. My strength, I feel my strength is, or I feel strong when I'm connecting people. I feel strong when I'm recruiting. You want to use that verb, that action description. And then you're going to sit down and you're going to start writing strength statements. And I have a very specific way I want you to do it, and I want you to get what I talk about as silly specific. Here's somebody who says, I feel strong writing. Writing what? Writing the copy for the back of a cereal box? Tell me what you feel strong writing. What are you writing? Who are you writing for? What happens when you do this writing? Get very specific. Go from I feel strong writing to I feel strong writing technical documents that explain things logically and clearly to developers and end users. I'm less likely when we talk about your strength and you have a specific strength statement, I'm not going to expect you to write the copy for a cereal box or the company newsletter when you've told me it's technical documents for developers and end users that makes you feel strong. Got another example, the usual, I'm a people person. Are you going to be a greeter at Walmart? Maybe you are. That takes a people person to do that job. It will tap into that strength. But tell me more what this is. I feel strong supporting teams. Okay. What kind of teams? Who's on the team? What are they doing? What are you accomplishing? I feel strong documenting and archiving the work of performance excellence teams so they can review lessons learned for future project success. And if you've caught on, this is a change from the previous statement where somebody felt strong writing. This person might be doing similar work, but it's not the writing itself that makes them feel strong. It's supporting the team. The writing helps them support the team. So again, when I'm looking at how to give this person their next assignment or grow their career, and I know that they like to support their team so the team can get ready for future work, I can start to see what kind of assignments this person would thrive in. Here's another one. If somebody comes up on their standout assessment that their strength is an influencer, it's still hard to go to your boss and say, I'm an influencer and you should give me assignments that help me tap into that strength. Well, make that strength be real to me. I feel strong discussing the positive outcomes of a decision with my team. What's the topic? Who are you doing it for? What's the outcome? Get silly specific. I feel strong leading decision analysis for stage 2 milestones where I show my team the business impact of their decisions. And again, we can have this discussion then about, well, what does that look like for future assignments and work? And how do we expand your job and keep you challenged and engaged? You can use these strength assignments to discuss your accomplishments. When you go on an interview, one of the things they always ask is, well, tell me about your accomplishments. Well, tell them about your accomplishments in terms of your strengths. So you may have an accomplishment that, you know, I wrote up the documents for Project X, and as an interviewer, I may be thinking, I don't have anything like Project X. This really isn't going to be a good fit. But if you're telling me, here's my accomplishment, and here's how it tapped into that strength of mine, then I can say, okay, I don't have Project X, but the fact that you help people come up to speed quickly and that developers and end users understand what's going on, I see how that accomplishment is a strength of yours and we can use it in other areas. You can also use those strength statements to give feedback to others. At the end of the year when we're doing those performance reviews that we still have to do decades later, my team does a lot of support work for other people, and so I'm asking those other people, how did Alyssa do? How did Dan do? And I'll get feedback like, Alyssa is a joy to work with. Dan, we just love having him for a team member. And quite honestly, I'm glad you like working with them, but I have no idea how to give them new assignments. I cannot give them a promotion based on the fact that they're a joy to work with. It's useless feedback. You wasted your time, you wasted mine. If you're going to give feedback, take some time to be just as specific with that feedback as you are in telling your team about your strengths. Tell me that Jane was a great help on the team, but keep going. Tell me why. She got our test data to us on time. She handles change rapidly. Rapid change, it just doesn't make her get all distraught. It's a strength of hers. I'm like, oh, I can put Jane on another team that's going through a lot of change and needs to deal with it and make people comfortable with all these changes we're implementing. So again, try to be just as specific with that feedback that you're giving to others. I'm going to pause here and go back to one of my earlier screens. You'll see that when I have you write your strength statements, they feel kind of clunky, this I feel strong writing technical documentation. I'm telling you to say I feel strong. I'm telling you to not say my strength is writing technical documentation. If you sit down with somebody and you tell them my strength is writing technical documentation, they can say, no, it's not, you're wrong. They haven't seen that. If you say, I feel strong when I write technical documents, they can't tell you your feeling is wrong. You feel strong when you do that. That is a given. That's a fact. They can say, I don't see that. I don't think you've had a chance to do that. Tell me more. You're opening up the conversation by saying, I feel strong, rather than just saying this is my strength. If you just say this is my strength, the other person can kind of shut down the whole conversation. No, it's not, you're wrong. And then what are you going to do? So I encourage you to use this format of I feel strong when I do this. People can question, they can ask for more information, but they can't tell you your feelings are wrong. You might have to practice this to make it feel like a comfortable way to have the conversation. Again, use your board of directors. You know, here's my strength statements. Linda Marks told me I'm supposed to say it this way. Does this just sound crazy? And get comfortable with it. Mix the words up a little bit, but I want you to own your strengths. You feel strong doing this kind of work. Don't just say, this is my strength, and give people that opening to argue with you about whether it's a strength or not. Let them question whether you're really bringing that strength to the workplace and how you can do more of that. We've got this strengths equation here just as a reminder that strengths are these things that you are innately good at that seem easy, but you also need to invest in them to get better at them. You still need to spend time on your weaknesses, maybe 20% of your time. You don't want those to hold you back, but really invest time in your strengths. Invest in these talents you have so they become even stronger strengths. How do you do that? Here's another mnemonic you can use, free. You've got your strength statements. You're going to talk to your project leader or to your manager, your supervisor about your strengths. The next conversation you want to have, because this is not just a one-time conversation. You're having these career-type discussions all the time. You want to focus on how that strength shows up in the job you currently have. This is the job you have. These are the things your supervisor needs you to accomplish. How do you bring your strengths to that role? Make it a partnership. Help your supervisors see how those strengths still help you accomplish what has to get done. Look around in your job for other opportunities where you can use that strength. Most of us actually have a fair amount of leeway in how we do our job. There are milestones we have to meet. There are deliverables we have to bring. But how we do that, there's some freedom there. So where are other opportunities in the job you have right now where you can bring your strengths? Are there training and workshops and opportunities that would help you practice new skills and techniques that build on your strengths? I talked earlier about how joining employee resource groups let me practice things. I did recruiting in that group long before I actually hired people in the company, so I got to practice that skill. So again, it's not always taking a course or a workshop, but look around for some out-of-the-box ways to learn things that will build on your strength. And again, can you build your job around a strength? Maybe it's not this job you have today, but do you slowly build up for that your next position taps even more into that strength, and eventually you've got a job where we've just built it around what your strength is and you're just thrilled to get out of bed even on a Monday morning. So here's my challenges for you. What are the 2 actions you can take immediately so you can leverage these strengths tomorrow more than you did today? And I'm making it very specific. I'm saying do this tomorrow because you're going to get busy. We're going to sign off here from WebEx and you're going to start your evening and the week will go by and 2 weeks go by and somebody might ask you about this and you're like, I got notes somewhere about those strengths and yeah, it's a good idea. So think about what you're going to do tomorrow that's strength focused. And then again, is there some weekly ritual so you can keep doing this and keep strengths at the forefront of your mind? It's easy to get distracted. You're going to be busy. People don't talk about strengths all the time. People are going to tell you what you're not good at. How do you keep those strengths in the forefront? The one thing I do is Marcus Buckingham goes on Instagram Live on Friday afternoons, 3 o'clock East Coast time, and I get on board and I shift to my lunch and take a late lunch and I listen to his presentations on Friday afternoons. Is there somebody who can mentor you on your strengths path? Is there somebody on your board of directors? Do you have a coach, somebody else who buys into this idea of tapping into your strengths? Can you put some meetings on your calendar to regularly sit down and have a coffee break and talk about these strengths? I mentioned getting together with others. The employee resource groups worked for me, but can you partner with others for peer coaching? Everybody who's on this call today, can you tap into some of those people and say, I want to try these strength statements, but I'm not sure. Can we just check in with each other and go back and forth on these strength statements? Do they make sense? Get feedback from them, get feedback from your board of directors. Craft those strength statements, polish them up before you're ready to share them with a boss or a project leader. And look for opportunities to start demonstrating your skills in projects beyond what you have to do day to day. You want to bring stronger skills back to your work team. You want to be able to go back now and say, hey, I've tapped into talking about my strengths. I want to hear about the team's strengths. Think about how you can gain visibility across different departments and project teams. You can grow your career because you did work here and then you did work here. One of the things I got good at in my career was moving laboratories. It's a heartless task. Anything that can go wrong is going to be a catastrophe. You have to be very organized and do meticulous planning and keep people's spirits up. I got to go to Japan for 3 months because they were putting in a new research lab, and they were so afraid of shutting down and moving a lab that they would miss something and it would be a catastrophe. I was good at that, so I had the visibility to go to Japan and do that kind of work. If you can build broad networks, join employee research groups, tap into this intern network. You can hear about other projects. You can tell your team, hey, if this is a strengths gap, let me tap into my network. I know somebody else who is good at that. And eventually those people will be doing the same thing. They'll be saying, hey, I know somebody, you, who's good at this. Let's bring them in. Talk to your teams. Talk to the people you work with every day about strengths. Get them excited about this. And just spend a greater percentage of your week each week working on your strengths. I really believe it's a way that you can change the world. I am going to turn this over to you to ask you your feedback. What are the valuable things you learned today? It helps me make sure we give good workshops. This is a little different for me. I haven't been able to see you. We haven't been able to interact face-to-face one-on-one. And then as we close, this whole idea of living your strongest life, counting on your strengths, you're going to get the link to the StandOut assessment. You'll get these handouts. I've listed some more resources. There are YouTube videos. There are Instagram videos if you want to find out more about Buckingham. I'm going to close the presentation. Now I should be able to hear from you, answer questions. Jessica, if you can help me out, people can take themselves off mute, right? If they want to answer a question, if they didn't want to type it into comments.
Yep, so they can either take themselves off mute. It's a pretty small group, so that would definitely work. And also they can put questions in the chat.
All right, I'm going to actually open up the chat that I haven't been able to see while I'm presenting.
Okay.
I see Amanda, like that whole section on the myth busting. And again, yeah, it's one of those, I don't want to be a Pollyanna and say, oh, this works all the time. Be aware of those myths. Thanks, Amanda. Anybody else want to share their takeaways from today?
I actually liked all the resources that you provided. I added the book from Marcus into my Amazon cart already and was just Google searching him on Insta. Yeah, I really liked it. It was really interesting. So, and we can send these resources out to the group as well, just so they can follow up and look. But
okay.
There was a question. Yep. Okay, go ahead.
Janet has had a comment that are there tips on identifying tasks where our strengths apply? Because isn't it possible that certain strengths overlap and mingle, making it more complex? And yes, they do. I think if you focus on that, a strength is something that makes you feel strong. So if it's a task that you can get excited about, it might be a task you have to do and you got to figure out how I bring my strength to it. But if it's a task where you're like, oh, I am all over this, and you can bring your strengths into it, it's kind of it's back to that, a strength is something that makes you feel strong advice. One of the things I shared with Jessica before we started, I've focused on how StandOut and strengths apply in the workplace for your career success. Right now, Buckingham is running a series where he's bringing people in to talk about how they've applied their strengths to the whole activist movement. So if you have plans, if you are politically active or are going to be, or you're involved in community groups, there's a place to bring your strengths to bear in those activities too. is there a most common or least common strengths you see in people when having these standout workshops? I started collecting and putting spreadsheets together to see where people's strengths were. Years ago, we used to do the Myers-Briggs assessments, and for the science and technology community, we did attract certain Myers-Briggs MBTI types. We're attracted to that kind of work. With the standout assessments, I really haven't seen one strength or a series of strengths more common than the others over large groups. In my department, and again, we're helping scientists to do science. I have a lot of teachers. I only have a 7-person team, but they have teacher as one of their top 2 strengths. And I think a lot of the work we do is teaching people new computer skills, teaching them how to use a new process. So I'm kind of not surprised that my group has attracted people where teaching is a strength. I have 2 screens, so when you see me looking away, I'm looking at the bigger screen that's easier for me to see. How about, what are you guys going to do tomorrow to be more strength focused? Something specific that you're going to do on Tuesday, July 7th. We've got Stella has pointed out that there won't be a chance to tap into strengths with not going back to school. So for the next several months, what do you do every day, non-workplace methods where you can use your strengths? So one of the things is you can use your time to build on those strengths. If you actually have the time right now to tap into a hobby or something that you wanted to learn that speaks to your strengths, kind of do that now. Use the time to build on those strengths in very creative ways rather than looking at the time as a burden. Hey, I don't have a job place to go to showcase my skills. Do some reading. Try to identify other people who might have those same skills and perhaps read up on how they became a leader.
I actually had a question come through in the private chat. So how would you recommend initiating a conversation with a supervisor who doesn't put you in a position to use your strengths?
So I want to give supervisors the benefit of the doubt. They want their people to be successful, right? They don't deliberately give you assignments that won't let you tap into their strengths. So I would approach a conversation as that perhaps they haven't heard about this. You own your career and your job growth, and your supervisor helps support that. Corning is very big on this. Your supervisor is not the one who drives your career. You are, and they help support it. So you can set up a one-on-one with them and just explain, hey, I went to this workshop and they talked about strengths. Have you heard about this? And so you might need to have that discussion first, just in broad general terms, what I've shared with you today, why this is so good for the workplace, and hey, I've been working on my strength statements, and can we meet again and talk about those? So then you have a second discussion where you talk about what your strengths are and hear from your supervisor how she sees those or maybe isn't seeing them show up, and try to do this one-on-one for how they show up. And again, you want to, depending on who your supervisor is, how open are they to the discussion, you're helping them. You're not trying to take away from their role. And I know each supervisor is different. If your supervisor is not open at all to this, you may want to make sure you have a mentor or a coach who's not your supervisor, but who can give you feedback, and you can say, hey, even though your supervisor isn't recognizing this strength, you can bring it to work but using this approach, and maybe after the fact point out to your supervisor, hey, that was a win-win for us. I am glad I have a strength in doing XYZ. Gabriel pointed out that people aren't always comfortable having this discussion about what your strengths are. And a lot of it, I think we're taught to not brag about ourselves, right? Oh, it was nothing. Or, oh, I couldn't have done it without the team. Well, yes, it's true, you needed your team, but it wasn't nothing. And all that information I gave you early in the presentation about this helps the company's bottom line too. You're not bragging about yourself. You're not over-exaggerating your contributions or your talents. You're just explaining to someone, this is my strength, here's how it showed up, let's talk about it. Or this is my strength, here's how I wish it would show up, let's talk about it. It's not bragging, it shouldn't be uncomfortable, and you're doing the company a favor by not making them guess what your strengths are or take years to figure it out. And somebody else pointed that they don't like to confront people, and how do you change that? In some of Marcus's videos on YouTube, he talks about one of his weaknesses is confrontation, that he will do everything to get away with confronting people. And again, I think even for me, I don't like confrontation. I don't know that there are very few people who really thrive on confrontation. But if you think about it as it's a thing you want to confront, not the person. You don't want to tell the person they're bad or they're wrong or they need to be fixed. Address what the confrontation is. We're not seeing eye to eye on this issue. If it's no kidding, hey, I need you to do it this way this time. You can actually, as a manager, I can tell my people, today I need you to do it this way because I have to have this information by tomorrow. We can talk about it later. Make that discussion, that confrontation about the thing, not about the person or their personality. It doesn't get easier, but once it's done, you'll sleep a whole lot easier at night. Have the discussion, have the tough discussion quickly. You want to think it through, have the discussion, and move on. I think it comes with experience that that's what you need to do. I don't know that it ever gets easier.
Thanks, Linda. These are awesome. Really good responses. If anybody else has any more questions or anything we want to pick Linda's brain about while we have her, I'm really enjoying her advice and discussions about the questions that you all are asking. So we can give it another minute or two to see if there's any other. There's some really good feedback.
And I did include my email in the presentation, and I am open to, give me a holler. I like doing this work. Once you've got your strength statement written, if you want to talk about it with me, I'm open to that too.
All right, I think we are good with the questions. Really good, positive comments. Linda, I just want to thank you so much. This was such a great presentation and so insightful. I will definitely be using a lot of this information in my everyday life and following up and becoming a avid fan of Marcus. So,
okay.
Yeah,
well,
and then thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to shout out to everybody. Go ahead and do those strength statements, start living your best lives, and tell me how it goes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now. So thank you to everybody who attended today. And again, thank you so much, Linda, for your time today. It was such a great presentation. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
So much.